chapter 12,
Verse 1.
verse 1. Okay, I'm ready.
Almost. Setting it up. Okay, Maharaj. You're ready.
Hare Krishna, my dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Today we're hearing about Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 12, entitled Devotional Service, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Text number 1. Arjuna Uvacha. Evam satata yukta ye. Bhaktas tvam paripasate. Ye chatya aksharam adyaktam. Tesam ke yoga vita maha. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifest? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the absolute truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take the devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth. But Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct, and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body. He is a spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the supreme whole, and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole, meaning fully to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then again, in the 8th chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the 6th chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So, in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahmacharya. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so, actually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now, Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. Oh, that's very, very important. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could thus understand all of the forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question, asked of Krishna by Arjuna, will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Very nice. Text number 2. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mani Avesa Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shradhaya Para Yo Veritas Te Me Yukta Tama Mata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form, meaning Krishna's personal form, and who worships him, meaning Krishna, with faith and devotion, is to be considered the most perfect in yoga. For one, in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities, because everything is done for Krishna. If your devotee constantly engaged, sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks for Shava, or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. Wow, there it is. This is the real samadhi, real definition of samadhi. Text 3 and 4. Ye tvakshanam anirdesyam avyaktam paripaste sarvatra gam achintyam cha kutastam achalam dhruvam saniyam yendriya gramam sarvatra sama udaya te prapunuvanti mam eva sarvabhuta ite rata. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone. Such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead, Krishna, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Sri Krishna. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, in Krishna, knowing that Vasudeva is all. When a person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred here, and it is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna. Otherwise, there is no perfect realization. Often, there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him, in Krishna. In order to persevere the super soul within the individual soul, one has to cease the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between a man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. Text number 5. Kleso dikaritas te sam, avyakta sakta chetasam, avyakta hi gatir dukam, devat bir avakyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The group of transcendentalists who follow the path of the inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called Jnana Yogis, and persons who are in full Krishna consciousness, engaged in devotional service to the Lord, are called Bhakti Yogis. Now, here the difference between Jnana Yogi and Bhakti Yogi is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome. Whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga, the process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is easier and is natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the Bhakti Yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality Godhead in his form within the temple is not idol worship. Yeah, Hindus always say idols. How are they idols? I always correct them that they're not idols, they're deities. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be saguna and nirguna of the Supreme, possessing or not possessing attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship. That means with a quality. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material qualities. But the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities, such as stone, wood, or oil paint, is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. A crude example may be given here. We may find some mailbox on the street, and if we post our letters in those boxes, they will naturally go to their destination without difficulty. But any old box or an invitation which we may find somewhere, but which is not authorized by the post office, will not do the work. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form, which is called Archa Vigraha. This Archa Vigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. God will accept service through that form. The Lord is omnipotent, all-powerful. Therefore, by his incarnation as Archa Vigraha, he can accept the services of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man in conditioned life. So, for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme Personal way to spiritual realization. For those who are following, so for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads. And they have to learn the language, understand the non-perceptual feeling. Well, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. How are you going to understand non-perceptual feelings? And realize all these processes. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual teacher, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality directly. A similar passage appears in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated there that if one ultimately has to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This surrendering process is called bhakti, but instead takes the trouble to understand what is Brahman and what is not Brahman, and spends his whole life in that way. The result is simply troublesome. Therefore, it is advised here that one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization, because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. A living entity is eternally an individual soul, and if he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he may accomplish the realization of the eternal and knowledgeable aspects of his original nature. But the blissful portion is not realized. That's very important. Without the blissful portion, one will definitely fall down eventually. By the grace of some devotee, such a transcendental, highly learned in the process of jnana yoga, may come to the point of bhakti yoga or devotional service. At that time, long practice in impersonalism also becomes a source of trouble because he cannot give up the idea. Therefore, an embodied soul is always in difficulty with the unmanifest, both at the time of practice and at the time of realization. Every living soul is partially independent, and one should know for certain that this unmanifested realization is against the nature of his spiritual blissful self. There it is. Against the nature of his spiritual blissful self. One should not take up this process. For every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotional service, is the best way. If one wants to ignore this devotional service, there is the danger of turning to atheism. Oh boy. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. It is not advised by Lord Krishna. Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think, are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Because we're almost out of time.
So if merging into the Brahman is against our individual self, which is the blissful potency, right? So why do a lot of people do a lot of penances and austerities to merge into the Brahman, Maharaj? Is big lack of knowledge?
Yeah, they don't have the information.
They only know up to Brahman.
Yeah. And that means that there's a great chance that they can fall down. Because there's no joy.
Joy, yeah. There's no bliss.
There's no bliss.
Only Sat and Chit.
Yeah, there's knowledge.
Yeah, and eternity. Yeah.
So it's incomplete.
Incomplete, yeah. This is clearly condemning. Prabhupada is clearly condemning that process. And Krishna himself is saying in the verse itself, right? Like that.
Krishna says, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome.
Troublesome.
Right there.
Krishna himself is telling it.
To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Yeah, very difficult, very troublesome. Okay, I think we'll stop right there.
Yes, Master.
Unless there are questions. We already had one very good question. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Okay, then our takeaway for today is the following. If one wants to ignore devotional service, there is the danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. It is not advised by Lord Krishna. Pretty clear.
Mhm.
Followed by really the clarity that is irrevocable.
There's no beating around the bush.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, I think we will end our seance because I'm going to go to the temple now and chant Hare Krishna.
Very good.
Hare Bol. All glories to Shiva.